Welcome to Jerry Berry's Friend-Tastic Library. Today I'm gonna do my March reading stats. I do them every month, so I have a February reading a January, a February, and now a March. I'll link the other two below. My first one in January, I did like a whole PowerPoint and actually showed like the physical statistics, but I just got bored with that. I want to just sit here and talk to you like a person about the books I read. And you can agree with me or disagree with me or whatever, right? I always love talking to people about books. Whether you liked them or not, I love hearing what you thought of them. I love supporting people that want to read. All the good things. I have stickers stuck to me from working on my bullet journal. But anyways, yeah, so March stats. I did not read as much this month as I have my previous months because it was my birthday month, so a lot of my weekends were busy. I took off for work to go to Vegas. I wasn't reading while I was in Vegas. But I did have some really good books this month. I probably won't even break down the stats for you because I just don't want to. Like, I keep track of it in my reading bullet journal. I keep track of all my stats in my reading bullet journal, but I just don't want to like go over them really. But yeah. Anyways, I had a goal set out to read 13 books and I read 8 of them. One of them I did not read because I could not get an audiobook version and I tried so hard to read the ebook and I just didn't have time. One of them I didn't do because the audiobook doesn't sound very good. The Last Anniversary by Leanne Moriarty has been on my list forever and ever and ever, and I just haven't gotten through it yet because the audiobook just isn't good. I think it was her first or second book ever written. She's my like all-time favorite artist so far. And I've read everything that she's written besides this one book because the audiobook is just not good. And I think since it came out so long ago, audiobooks weren't really a thing yet. So that's why the audio version isn't that great. But we'll get into the books that I did read. I started the month out strong, like literally day 1 of March on the 1st. I read, I consumed The Loneliest Girl in the Universe. And this is considered like a YA sci-fi novel. The premise is that humanity is ending for whatever reason. So they send this spaceship out, but everyone dies except for one teenage girl. I think she was a lot, if I remember correctly, she was only like 10 or 11 whenever everybody died. So now she's like a teenager and she's stuck on the ship. And she has to try to get the human race saved by going to the other planet that they found that can contain life. I thought it was really good. I ended up like binge listening to it where I finished it in almost a day. So yeah, I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was a great way to start the month. I couldn't put it down. Like I couldn't stop listening to it. Like I was listening on my way home from work, like white knuckling the stereo. Like what's going to happen? I don't usually like YAs because of like the drama that's in it. It just doesn't connect with me because I'm not a young adult anymore. Or like I feel like they say young adult, but they're really meant towards like teens mostly. So that's, yeah, it's a whole thing. Anyways, but I loved this one because I identified with the character on an anxiety level, and at the same time, I was so scared for her from like a mom perspective. It was like even if something felt predictable or cliche, I was still like hurting for the main character from coming from like a mom perspective. So I thought it was a really good book. Yeah, I think this is like a good one that if you're like in a reading slump to go for because it's pretty short as well. It's only like a 7-hour audiobook, 290 pages. The author is Lauren James. I'll show you like my spread for it. Isn't it so pretty? And then I listened to Where the Deer and the Antelope Play, the pastoral observations of one ignorant American who loves to walk outside. That's by Nick Offerman, or Ron Swanson, as I call him, because I could never remember his real name. He is the narrator, so if you love Nick Offerman's voice, you will love the audiobook. It's a long one. It's almost 12 hours. It's 352 pages. I actually sped this one up and I listened to it at like 1.25 speed. I love his voice, but he did talk kind of slow. But it was very good. I gave it 5 stars. It's like a memoir. He shares stories of his life and opinions that he believes in, or shares facts about life from his perspective. And he takes you on this journey of this long hike that he did with his friends. And along the hike, he shares tales, memories, yeah, just his own facts, advice, and opinions. So, I think there's a couple quotes that I wrote down. Oh, the other thing too is like I read Brene Brown's Braving the Wilderness. I did that in January. So in my January wrap up, you'll get my full review there. But basically, I think I gave that book like 3 stars. I really love what Brene Brown does, and I definitely have mad respect. But I couldn't really connect with her in that book until like the last hour. So that's why I didn't like that book as much. I felt like I could connect to Ron Swanson better than Brene Brown, and they were covering very similar topics in both books. I love, and close to the beginning of the book, he's talking about how they're first starting to go on their hike. And one of the quotes was, he is able to simply engage only in what is necessary. He had boots. He had warm layers. He had water. Boom, let's hike. And I loved that quote. I laughed out loud. And he just talks about how some people can just go. They just need the simplest things in life. Meanwhile, other people like himself had to go to REI and drop a lot of money to prepare for a hike. So another really good quote that I liked from this book, he talks a lot about nuance. So one of his quotes about nuances was, it's one of those many nuances of white society that many people don't really think about until someone points it out. Like performing blackface or making slanty eye jokes to mock Asians, for example. It simply never came up in the 1980s before we had the internet to make us aware that we were being extremely shitty to a large portion of the population, no matter who we were stereotyping. So I love the way he's just like, that's just how he talks throughout the whole book and or writes, and how he reads it throughout the whole book. He's just like, here's my opinions, here's some facts. And I don't know, I just love the way he wrote it and said it. I think I'll definitely revisit this book in the future because I think I could have taken way more notes than what I did. The next one I read was Station 11. And this one I took pretty extensive notes because the timeline is kind of confusing. So I did a timeline. I drew some doodles here of what like inspired me while I was listening to it. Survival is insufficient. What will you miss most? These were quotes and like pulled out from the book and were like on the cover and stuff. So I don't think I have any specific quotes from this book, but it was definitely like hitting close to home. There is a show out called Station 11, and I tried to watch the first episode, and I felt like everything was so different that I almost felt like I was gaslighted. I was like, do I have to reread the book? Did I miss everything? But I think they just changed a lot of it. I think they used like the characters' names from the book and maybe skimmed a couple pages. But otherwise, I feel like they changed too much just in the first episode. I do want to watch the show, but I need more time to forget the details of the book so that I can truly enjoy the show. Because I do think they're going to do a really good job with it. The whole topic of Station 11 is a pandemic that kills like 98, I think, in the book. It's 98% or 99% of the population. At one point, I think they say 1 out of 253 people lived, or 1 out of every 253 people lived, or something like that. So, and it was called the Georgia flu because it came from the country of Georgia, similar to like COVID. And they called it like the China flu at first because it came from China. So, yeah, it was really good. It did take me like 2 days to finish it. It's by Emily St. John Mandel, and she does have another book that I want to read. It's something about a glass door, I think, but it's definitely on my TBR now because I loved the way she wrote this book. The timeline was really fascinating to see how all the characters would like come together and connect. And the whole basic idea of it being called Station 11 is there's a woman in the story that is working on a comic book. And in the comic book, they're in space on a space station 11. So that's where that gets the title from. But yeah, I thought the ending was really good. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I did love Station 11. That was another 5-star. I had a lot of 5-star reads this month, which I was happy about. I think I picked good books. I tried to pick all women authors. Nick Offerman was the only non-female identifying author this month because it was Women's History Month. So the next one I read was Broken in the Best Possible Way by Jenny Lawson. Again, the author reads the book and it's more like a memoir style. I have this whole sheet of quotes written out that I had to tape in. But I loved it. I was worried that I wouldn't like it, and I had already listened to like a memoir this month, so I was like, oh, it might be boring. But I actually loved it, and I listened to it pretty quickly. It's 8 hours long, 320 pages. She talks quickly. And yeah, she just talks about her life, and she is a hilarious person. I have never laughed so hard listening to an audiobook in my life. Like, I was the crazy person at my desk, like crying from trying to hold in my laughter at certain parts. There's I'm trying to think. There's a chapter all about people sharing their hilarious, embarrassing moments with her, and she reads them, and I was like dying. I could not breathe. I was laughing so hard, and I was like snorting. And then there's a whole chapter about her husband, and like, yeah, there's a quote. I think I wrote it down. There's a quote that she says. Yeah, so there's a whole chapter about her husband, and there's a quote that says, if you were married to a saint, you would feel guilty all the time for fucking up like a regular human, and eventually you would assume that your spouse was possessed by a demon because no one is perfect all the time. The most rational explanation would be that this possessed motherfucker is just being perfect at you to mess with your head. And I loved that quote so much because if you know my husband, he is like a saint. He is so freaking perfect. And people are always like, oh my gosh, Jerry, I love your husband. And I'm like, I do too. But he gets annoying because he's just too damn perfect all the time, right? And so whenever she said that, I was like dying. I was dying and relating so hard. And then there's also some deep moments. There's definitely trigger warnings with this book. Unexpected trigger warnings, I guess I should say. Because she does talk about like mental health and disabilities and her physical health. And but she does it in such a good way where it's so relatable and so accepting and not like you don't feel judged in any way. And it doesn't get too sad. She still keeps it pretty lighthearted. But she did have a quote that I wrote down that said, "This is a good day. As far as mental illness is concerned, that is. I got out of bed. That in itself is amazing and doesn't always happen. But today it did, and I'm proud of that." And I loved that so much because I want to come back and constantly read this to remind myself when I'm in my lows that if I got out of bed, like, I'm winning. That's it. Your purpose in life is to just get up and get out of bed and do what makes you happy, and then go to sleep at night and do it all over again. And I loved every minute of that quote. Next book I read was The Orchid Thief. I did not like this one. It just didn't capture my attention. I guess I'm not as much into orchids as I thought I would be. This book is by Susan Orlean. I read the library book by her in January, which is why this one was on my list. And her writing is good. It wasn't like it's a bad book. I would recommend it to people that may have more interest in the topic. But it took me a long time to get through it, like almost the whole month, because I just did not find the topic as interesting as I thought I would. So I gave it 3 stars because I do think that it is good writing, and I do think that it is a good like book if you are into orchids or Florida or crime involving flowers, because that's basically what it's about. Yeah, the one quote that I did write down though was, "I loved the strange waxy texture of the leaves and how plants could be so fragile and strong all at once. It's difficult to imagine the precious organisms spreading across an entire planet without anyone to take care of them. Somehow they survive on mountains and in deserts and underwater without any defense." And I loved that. Again, that kind of tied into my mental health, where I was like, I'm going to be like a flower and I'm going to fucking make it, you know? So next book was The Gracier by Kim Liggett. It's this one on the pink side, and I really loved this book. I feel like you can tell if I really like a book because I spend more time on the page, if I'm really passionate about it. So The Gracier is a YA, like sci-fi dystopian novel, like a YA version of The Handmaid's Tale. The author even quotes The Handmaid's Tale like in the first page on the like acknowledgments or the cover page or something like that. Whatever. I literally read this book in one day. The audiobook is 11 hours and 40 minutes, and I put it to 1.25 speed very quickly because I was like sucked in immediately, and I literally listened to it all day long. Like, I got to work, I started it on my way to work, listened to it all day at work, trying to pause it as little as possible and have people bug me as little as possible. I listened to it all the way through lunch. I listened to it all the way home. And then I like put my baby to bed at 7, and then I listened to it until midnight, I think, whenever I finally finished it. And I could not put it down. It definitely has mixed reviews. It's definitely a YA novel, which means there's a cheesy romance in it. But for some reason, I was so fucking committed and sucked into this book. I loved it. If you are okay with cliche YA tropes with like the romances that shouldn't fit but they do, and like the star-crossed lover forbidden love aspect, and you also love the edginess of The Handmaid's Tale without too much body gore, horror, rapey stuff, then this is like an amazing book. Absolutely amazing. I almost feel like this could fit into The Handmaid's Tale because in The Handmaid's Tale show, they briefly show the younger women getting married off. So I feel like you could almost view this as like a book within The Handmaid's Tale because it's focused on teenagers getting ready for their wedding day that is chosen for them by the very religious dictatorship, I think, are the words to describe that without giving too much away. So, yes, The Gracier, like 10 out of 10 would recommend, especially if you are okay with cliche YA, like romance, sci-fi, fantasy novels. I don't want to give anything away. I just think you should read it. Yeah, the next book was The Help. I did a whole video on The Help book versus movie. I gave it 5 stars. I don't know if I said this or not, but I gave The Gracier 5 stars. Should be obvious. The Help I gave 5 stars. I was very nervous about it. I did do a whole video on it, so I don't want to talk too much about it. And it was even featured and talked about in my video where I created a bookmark for my bullet journal. I added like a book series page and I filled in my thoughts on The Help and showed how I kind of set up my journal and color it in. So yeah, I gave it 5 stars. It's a great book. It's a classic. I know it's like newer, but I feel like it's a classic. And I was nervous because the author is white and she's writing about African American experiences, but I think she did a great job. It has really high reviews for a reason. And with the audiobook, Octavia Spencer is the narrator for her character. Bonnie Turpin is the narrator for Abilene, played by Viola Davis in the movie. And Bonnie Turpin is like a well-known narrator. She is amazing. I love Bonnie Turpin. Love her. Can't get enough of her. And then I cannot remember who does the rest of the parts with like Skeeter and the other white women in the book, but there is a third narrator for that person. So I really love whenever there's multiple narrators and you can really get into the characters and connect with them. So I'll leave it at that. I'll link my other videos in the description box. My video comparing the movie and the book and where I set up my bullet journal and I talk about it in that one as well. So yeah. Last but not least was The Children of Virtue and Vengeance. And I don't remember if I actually rated this one yet. I may have rated it on my Goodreads and don't remember. But it is the second book in a trilogy. The first book was Children of Blood and Bone, and I did talk about that one in my February wrap-up. So I read the second book in the trilogy. It was not as good. I kind of just listened to it because I was committed to know what happened to the characters, but I feel like it was very cliche and unbelievable in the sense that like characters died and then somehow came back to life. There was a lot of drama, but with just like dumb, bad decisions where I'm like, you guys were so solid in the first book. Why all of a sudden are you making dumb decisions? I don't get it. The really the only thing that warmed my heart and made me enjoy the book was whenever, what's her name? Mama, not Mama, Madam, shit. I can't remember her name now. Hang on. I have notes about this, I think. Hopefully. Oh yes, Mama Agba. So, this is why it's important to have a journal about the books you read. The only thing that really touched my heart and like made me really, really love it was that she does find Mama Agba, the main character, or one of the main characters. But yeah, I'll definitely read the third one because I'm kind of committed at this point, and I'm hoping that it closes on a strong point. That happens often, I feel like, in trilogies where the middle is kind of like, just trying to push it along. And then the third one's like, boom, awesome ending. So I'm hoping that's what happens with this trilogy. I did start the Obelisk Gate, and I have not finished it because I kind of got in a slump, and I got really stuck on like TikToks and Reels, and I got really stuck on watching Euphoria, and now I'm stuck on watching Queer Eye. So I haven't been listening to as many books, and I haven't really been focused on as many as I haven't been as good at focusing on them while I'm listening to them because I have some other stuff going on at work. And I want to make sure I give the Obelisk Gate my fullest attention because it is such a good book. Like the first book in the trilogy was so good, and this one is already so good. But I'm just taking my time with it. So I'm hoping that I will finish it in April, but yeah. I don't actually have a TBR for April. I was literally just going to see what was available at my library and what stuck out to me and listen to it. Like, I know that I saw the Night Circus available through my library. I know One Last Stop is available through my library. The Obelisk Gate. So, like, those three kind of right now are top contenders. I have a lot of audiobooks that I own and haven't read yet or haven't finished. Like, I may have started and then got sidetracked and never finished them. So those are also things that I might work through. If you have any suggestions, I always love to add books to my TBR, and I always love suggestions from people. I feel like a TBR could just never be big enough. So yeah, if you have suggestions, let me know. If you agree with my reviews, let me know. If you don't agree with them, let me know. I love talking about books. You can find all of my links in the description. I have TikTok, Instagram, I have Anchor and Spotify. I have a Patreon. I have a Venmo. I have an Amazon wish list. I have all the things. And yeah, thank you guys so much. So that was April reading stats. I hope you enjoyed it. And sorry, that was March reading stats. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see what April brings. Okay, bye.